Hello, Twitter, LinkedIn, and YouTube colleagues. This is Becky Carlson, one of the co-creators of Learning Pioneers, a learning community committed to being the change in education from the ground up. And I'm here with Bimla Singh from Sandringham Primary School, who's one of our fabulous members. So, Bimla, should we start off? Would you be able to introduce yourself and say a bit about your role?
Yeah, sure. So I've been teaching now almost for 20 years, and I've been a classroom-based teacher, and I've seen education change over time. I've seen how I can say now after 20 years, we're in a better place. Still loads to do, still lots to improve on, but we're definitely getting there. Teaching is a passion. It's something I've always wanted to do. And I just want to make a difference. And that's always been my expectation of every learner I have known so far.
I love that introduction, Bimla. It's just so genuine. And I know, having spent time in your classroom, that lands with your children too. It's just, your practice is so grounded and caring of every single class member. And I know from the masterminds that you've been part of since the beginning of our teacher masterminds, just hearing all the examples from your classroom and the way you think about your students, I know that to be true. 20 years though, I didn't realize that. So have you been in Sandringham for 20 years?
Yes.
Lucky Sandringham.
It's one of those schools that I think you just get so involved with the community and the education culture. It's a place really hard to leave.
Yeah, no, I 100% hear that. And it's, again, knowing your school and knowing so many educators in your school. I think what's really there's so many things that are special about Sandringham, but you think so mindfully and carefully about what's important for the children, and really collectively put that into practice. And that's a rare thing, to just be able to be so grounded in what's going to make a difference. So I know you've worked with like Adrian Bethune, and you've had Guy Claxton in working with you a lot on the learning power approach. So those things are really like part of the DNA, well-being and the LPA, and you've worked on Oracy and just all those things that make a difference to children and the teachers.
It's all happening at Sandringham.
Yeah, that should be your tagline. Put that on a banner. Okay, thank you, Bimla. So we're going to dive in and talk a little bit about Learning Pioneers, because I think you've been with us since near the beginning. You've been in our teacher masterminds since they were a thing, at least anyway. So is this the end of the third year? I lose track, but yeah, end of the third year, and you're going to be in our masterminds next year as well, which is awesome. So can you cast your mind back? And first of all, I know that you joined Learning Pioneers through kind of Sandringham and through kind of an invitation through Sandringham. But what made you want to join the masterminds, and what were your first impressions of Learning Pioneers when you first joined?
I think what made me join, I came across an article, actually. It was something I was reading, and it was about the learning powered approach, Guy Claxton's. And I know, Becky, you did some work a few years back with Sandringham, and I came across some of that. And I think that's what was almost like, I'm really interested in this. I want to know more. How do we create a classroom where you've got 30 children, but you can create independence, critical thinking, creative thinking? It can be done. How do we do this? Because I think, thinking about the time that I trained, it was almost very, very regimented. You had your groups, you had your learners in their groups, and your groups stayed the same. And actually, after reading this information, I just thought to myself, this isn't right. Something needs to change here. For some reason, I don't agree with what I've been practicing so far. I need to make the change. And I think that's how I got onto this platform.
Oh, I'm loving this conversation, because what you've just shared there is the real crux of actually what changes education. And that comes from us being self-reflective practitioners and owning and reflecting and saying, do you know what? I've done it this way so far, and it's worked to a point, but now I've got this new information and research, or these new people I've heard from, and I can see a way I could do it better, and being brave enough to own that and say, right, how could it look different moving forward? And then one step further than that, investing in yourself, investing time and energy to grapple with the problem about how to go about that. And it's a never-ending process. So, it takes time to think about how to do that. Yeah. So kind of, I wanted to ask you about what you love about Learning Pioneers, and I guess kind of tied in with that. Now, let's start with that, because otherwise I'm going to ask you too many questions at once. What do you love about Learning Pioneers? What works for you?
Where do I start? I think the whole community. I've met some amazing practitioners along the journey. I feel it's a safe space. It's a place where you're not judged. And if you're not having a good day and something's not going well, you can openly say, listen, I tried this, it's not going well. Learning Pioneers, it's a place where you feel valued, and I think a place where you can share. A place where you can share something that has gone well for yourself, and you can put it out to the community for other teachers to try and use. And I think I just love the community. I just love the way everybody gets on, and just having that time, because teaching is such a busy profession. I think to have this date in your diary every other Tuesday, 4:00, Learning Pioneers, I think it's a place where you just sit down, get a coffee, and just wait to meet your the community.
I love all of that, Bimla, and it kind of, I love how you've picked up on the kind of community aspect, because that's especially something we've focused on this year. What does it mean to be in a community? What does the community look like? What should it feel like? How do you feel when you come into Learning Pioneers? So we did a launch recently, not a launch, we did a kind of webinar inviting people in to talk about what really matters in education. And as we were planning that and thinking about it, Kimberly Cooper, one of our members, shared that she said that Learning Pioneers was the most psychologically safe space she'd ever been in. And I was like, oh, wow, yes, because that's what we're trying to achieve. And that's what you've described, a place where you don't feel judged, where you can make mistakes, where you can share when you've had a bad day and things haven't gone so well. And people are going to hold that space for you and say, I've been there too. Tell me about it, And I think, you knowing the atmosphere of your school, it's also a psychologically safe space. But I've worked in so many places that haven't been. I've taught in places where it wouldn't be safe to share those kinds of things, and you would feel very vulnerable doing that. So part of the concept of Learning Pioneers is creating that kind of dream staff room, that kind of sanctuary for us to be able to share things that we're struggling with, but also share wins and things that are going well, and also really systematically plan how to put all those ideas into practice. So really appreciate that. I've got an extra little question. I know we had one more, but I was going to slip one in, because you've been with us for 3 years. Can you talk about one thing you've taken from the community and it's made a big impact on your practice? I can almost guess what you're going to say because of things you said in Masterminds, but I'd love to hear from you in your words.
There is so much. There is so much I've taken from Learning Pioneers. I mean, just our book studies. The book studies have just given me an opportunity to just reflect, and some wow people. Bill Lucas, Trevor McKenzie. I mean, I apologize if I haven't mentioned anybody's names, but it's just been amazing. I have taken snippets and I've tried to implement them in my classroom. So recently it was about Mark Finnis and the relationships, and how relationships are key. And it's not just the teacher that's in the classroom, it's the way how we interact with other adults, it's the way we interact with children, and how children are very good at reading negativity. Even when you don't mean it to be so obvious, it's there. And I think it's things like this that just made me stop and think, I need to approach this in another way. So as a teacher, I just feel I've just become so reflective in my own practice, and I've definitely tried to implement some of the things I've taken away on my journey with Learning Pioneers.
Yeah, I love all of that, and that kind of reflects back to what you were saying earlier, like almost like that the system of change, it starts with you and your mindset and the way we show up. And sometimes I put surveys out on social media, on Twitter and LinkedIn, and kind of ask, what people think is the most this or most that, or what has the biggest impact on this. And one thing I put out recently was what makes the biggest difference to what's the biggest block? I can't remember which one it was, to children reaching their unlimited potential. And one of the options was adult mindset. So and that was the biggest vote. So the consensus was it starts with us. It starts with our mindset that makes a difference to the children around us, what we believe in them, how we connect with them, whether we're positive around them. You were saying about negativity. And then the next phase out from this is in our micro course, actually. I'll share a link because you can do our micro course for free. I'll share a link for it afterwards. And I'm going to share your blog post, Bimla, because it kind of explores your journey a little bit in your practice too. But yeah, starting with yourself, moving out to your relationships with the children, with other staff members, with parents, between, staff members, between children, every single relationship we can think of. And from there, we can then start to think about building our pedagogy, because we've got that inquiring, open-ended mindset, that reflective practice, those strong relationships, and that's that really strong foundation to expand from there. So you've kind of described that.
Yeah, and just really taking on board the well-being side of it, the well-being of the child and yourself. Because you need to be in that positive mindset. And then you, like you just said, Becky, you need to believe in the learners that they can do well and they can be successful. And I think
Yeah, and that links again, just thinking about you were talking about relationships and the work we did with Mark Fitness and Dr. Robert Lowe. And the year before that, we worked with Adrian Bethune on developing well-being. So always at this time in September that, we've got another line of inquiry coming up in September, and it always focuses on the design principle of making the classroom a safe and interesting place to learn. And we spiral, it's well-being and it's relationships. And then we looked at behavior empowerment with Paul Dix and Lindsay Beth Lyons. And now we're going to look at belonging and inclusion, and the depth and the connection you then get in. You're just steeped in best practice from lead thinkers, So, yeah. So final question then. We were just, and this segues perfectly because I was just talking about our first inquiry being on belonging and inclusion. So just a little background to that too. I can say this about any line of inquiry we do, but I can't think of anything more important than every single child in our classroom feeling like they belong and feeling included. And I think it's so important to look at, because we can unconsciously be doing things that are making children feel unwelcome, not on purpose, just it's an unconscious habit that we've always done it this way, or we've just haven't really thought about how we show up in this way. But without knowing it, we could be ostracizing children. And we don't want that. We want to look at those things. We want to be brave and reflect on that, as you've spoken about. So I'm excited about that first line of inquiry for starters. We have Benny Cara, Joe Brassington and Kim Scott all coming to speak from different viewpoints on inclusion. But what are you most looking forward to about next academic year in Learning Pioneers?
I think just continuing to learn new things, that I can take away and implement, and actually know things that are purposeful, things that are meaningful, and actually understanding why I am doing this, why I want to be brave enough to make this change. Because if I take a step in something, it almost encourages my colleagues to have a little think about their practice. I think this journey has allowed me to just make changes, and with management on your side, SLT on your side, I think it makes a big difference. And to be able to invite other young teachers to this profession, to say it doesn't need to be this difficult if you just add a little bit of something. You can't change it overnight. It takes time. But if you start dripping things in gradually in September, you can see the outcomes slowly. Definitely worthwhile.
I love that. It's just that continual reflection of what next and what can we do purposefully. And there was a point at which you made me think about that cycle of conscious competence, from moving from unconscious, either competence or incompetence. But if we're unconsciously competent in something, we can't teach others how to do it. We don't understand what we're doing and why. So that process in Learning Pioneers of, let's examine what we're doing, let's look at what we're learning and what we know, let's keep doing that, and now we know exactly why, and let's stop doing that because we thought of a better idea, and then integrating. And that's the process we're continually going through, that you've described.
Let's be brave to make a change. If it doesn't work, let's stand up and say, listen, this isn't working. It's not working for the learners in my class. Every class is different. Every child is individual. Might work well in one class, may not work in another. Let's be brave as teachers to stand up and say, how am I going to change this? Who can I talk to? It's the networking. I think the Learning Pioneers has definitely opened up a network where you can communicate and you can see this message going through your school as well. It's like a thread.
Yeah. And then I guess with that community network, it's like we're all making those changes. So we're all there supporting one another. And the way you've described that, it's like small incremental changes. And they're never going to be then that big a risk, because you're always, Guy's got that mayonnaise metaphor where it's like dropping oil into mayonnaise. You're always dropping a bit of oil into the mayonnaise. So it's never going to be this kind of massive, but as you do that over time, we've got a really good visual for this. That's like incremental interest. So you do that over time, those 1% gains move, add up. And then by the end of the year, it's like, I was describing our learning journey and Learning Pioneers to an educator in Australia this morning. And I was like, by the end of this year, we're going to be different people. We're going to be different practitioners and completely different people because of the learning journey we've been through.
Absolutely.
Yeah, brilliant. We can wrap things up there, Bimla. Thank you so much for your time. I just love hearing from you and about your practice. And I just think your children are so lucky, and your team is so lucky to have you, to have, that experience and that model of positivity and bravery with that kind of groundedness and understanding. It's just a really powerful combination. So thank you for sharing your time.
And thank you, Becky, for this lovely platform, this platform to give us a voice. Thank you.
A pleasure. I absolutely love it. So total pleasure. Thanks so much. And bye-bye. Thank you. Bye-bye.